Hello, heathens. Welcome to Girls Gone Godless, the podcast where talking veggies only appear when Noe and Christina are really, really high. I'm Aaliyah.
I'm Christina.
And I'm Noe.
Come with us, the EvangeliKids, to see the evening known and escape from the known. Come with us, the EvangeliKids, and everything will be alright. Oh yeah, everything will be alright.
Today we get to sit down with Hugh Walker, the writer and composer of the deconstruction musical Benny Bingo and the EvangeliKids, that's opening at the Annoyance Theater in Chicago on January 2nd. In his own words, the show is a satire about what it's like to grow up in the evangelical Christian world and is an homage to children's shows like Psalty, the Singing Songbook, and The Donut Man, which my never Christian ass had to look up on YouTube. So I may never forgive you, Hugh. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to hear about this. I don't know anything about it, and I want to know all the things.
Wonderful.
Do you know about Bible Man?
So there's Bible Man, which is the evangelical superhero. Show's not based off of that. I went off of like the shows that always have some adult host with this little club of kids who's, there's kind of, it's like the Christian PBS Zoom that was for some reason incredibly potent in like the 80s through the early 2000s of Christian media.
How did you come up with this play? How did it all start?
When I was like 24, I had a little quarter life crisis because I wasn't doing what I always wanted to do, which was theater, musical performance. So I started in a church choir. I was still Christian at the time, which transitioned into, I joined a Black History Month celebration choir. This was in China, so they were running really low on Black people.
Okay.
So I was brought in as a tenor, which transitioned into joining an ABBA tribute band in China, which all spiraled into a lot of theater stuff. But then I moved back here to Chicago, and instead of getting involved with the theater scene here, I got involved with the comedy scene. So I started getting really involved with musical improv and sketch, but I felt a pull to do musical theater again, and I'd always wanted to write a musical, but all my connections in Chicago were comedy based. So I thought, I have to do something funny that's going to get, particularly the Annoyance, who I was gunning for, to accept my submission. And so I just thought back into my life, what do I have a lot of material to pull humor from? And it's evangelical trauma. So after that, it all kind of came out of me pretty quickly. And then we had what I consider to be our workshop season earlier this spring. We did 7 shows there. And it went through a rewriting process. And so now we're kind of officially launching it in January.
That is so exciting.
And it's so nice to be able to turn that trauma and all of these annoying experiences we've had into content and like profit off of it in our own way and heal, because fuck.
It's the closest thing we're going to get to reparations for all of our evangelical trauma, right?
Literally.
Yep. I mean, they say that the best art comes from traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're doing with your trauma. Is there a specific denomination of evangelicalism that you came up from?
So I was born into a Southern Baptist family, kind of raised in the Bible Belt. I come from, I guess, a very specific subculture. I'd call it Southern Baptist Air Force homeschool family. And those combine into something quite intense.
Right.
Yeah. But all that kind of amounts to is, being in church was my whole life. So all my friends were church, all my social outings were church. And as I think you can kind of tell from the musical, a lot of even just like the entertainment I consumed was also pretty Christian. So yeah, it was definitely my whole life.
When I was looking up Southern Baptist stuff, I thought the Southern Baptist Convention, like anytime I've ever heard that, and I swear I'm not an idiot, whenever I see Southern Baptist Convention, I thought that was like a thing, like a get-together, like Comic-Con. Like I thought it was a whole bunch of Southern Baptists getting together for a convention.
Yeah, it's just the name for the collective. I think they use that because the Southern Baptist churches are essentially independent. So they don't actually answer to the convention. It's more of like a gathering of churches. But there is like a yearly convention they go to. So you're not fully wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they do get together. Do they have little name tags? And
I think they're all just dressing up as Game of Thrones characters. I don't know.
Yes. How funny. Were you allowed any secular like music or
I was.
shows or anything?
I wasn't so like cut off and sheltered from the world. There was definitely like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Plugged In, Focus on the Family, James Dobson.
Adventures in Odyssey.
So that's the bright side, Adventures in Odyssey, fun time. But he also created a website called Plugged In, which would go through every movie and TV show and break down how immoral it is. So you can know whether or not your kid needs to watch it. And basically nothing passed muster. Everything was, demonically swaying you away from
Right.
God. So that was kind of the
Oh,
lifestyle I grew up
gosh.
in.
But if they were to run the Bible through that would not pass, immediately fail.
It certainly wouldn't,
That's
but
what I don't understand.
they always had a few exceptions, right? Like the Passion
Right.
came out and like, that's the most violent, gory thing, you could subject a kid to, but you should probably just do it.
Right.
But I was a pretty typical kid growing up until around my middle school years. I started to develop OCD. And, just like a little recap, OCD is always there's the obsession and obsessive thought that you can't get rid of until you do a compulsion. And what's really common, at least in evangelicalism, the obsessive thought is either about sin and salvation, and the compulsion is whatever prayer or practice that you can try to do to get rid of it. So I was reading the Left Behind books as a kid. Are you all familiar with Left Behind?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
super appropriate for children.
Well,
Right.
actually, there is Left Behind, the kids. So there's like Left Behind Junior.
Stop. Oh,
Really?
no.
So I read like the kids version of Left Behind, which the subject matter just as terrifying. It's not like
Sure.
they shield you from any of that. It's just that the writing is simpler. And so reading that, developing OCD, I think maybe middle school could have been a time where I could have maybe started to deconstruct or kind of develop my own identity. But my middle school years were spent convinced I was going to hell
Oh,
and
my
just
gosh.
praying over and over. So I became a kid who was quite serious about sin and obedience and salvation, which is kind of like the perfect Southern Baptist kid.
Are you me or am I you?
Yeah, Leo got
I got
baptized
baptized
a lot.
multiple times because I was
Aw.
afraid that either like a piece of my toe was not completely under the water, so then my toe would be sinning, or if I had done a new bad worse sin than what I had before, that my future sins were not going to be covered because I did a worse sin, so I have to get baptized again.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I've taken the dunk many times because of a similar worldview.
In Southern Baptists, we're very, very strict. We're like, baptism and salvation are different things, and we would judge the hell out of your denomination for thinking that
That's
was the
fine.
case.
I love that. Yeah.
Which is what denominations do, right?
Right.
Judge 'em.
So for me, it was just praying the salvation prayer because in all the Sunday school classrooms I had growing up, there was the Salvation Kids poster. It was like A, B, C, admit you're a sinner. B, believe in Jesus Christ. C, confess him as Lord. After you pray that, that means that you're converted and you're not going to hell anymore. So I was always convinced I had done the prayer wrong. And so I, as a 12-year-old, would just like sit and pray for like an hour over and over and over, convinced I had done it wrong.
Wow.
But part of the reason I bring that up is because I think it kept me more devout when there was another fork in the road I could have taken that maybe I could have been one of like the casual kids that just falls away from it, but I wasn't.
Right.
But yeah,
I'm so sorry. When I hear stories like that, I'm just like, "Ugh, these little kids, they're so innocent and sweet. And in their mind, they're just scared of hell and, all these thoughts inside. And I'm sorry
Mhm.
that you went through that. I read Left Behind when I was 12 or 13,
Really?
but only because like I was reading Stephen King books and stuff.
Mhm.
And then I went camping and there was like one of those little libraries and it was in there. And I read it and I just read it like it was a sci-fi. It wasn't until way later that I realized, I think when Kirk Cameron made the movies, that it was an
Mhm.
actual religious book.
That people take that for literal truth.
Right.
And one fun piece of trivia, that author, he wrote all those Left Behind books. He also wrote one book outside of the series called The Act of Marriage, which was given to me in the weeks preceding my wedding, which we can get into later. But yeah, so he's
Oh,
very
my
concerned
goodness.
with outdated end time theology and having very vanilla sex in marriage.
Ew.
No, thank you. You were a conservative Christian,
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
And it gives me hope that there are people out there that will switch to not being conservative or Christian. So
Sure.
I would love to hear a little bit more about that part of your life.
Yeah, it was a very long process. I'm 34 and I only really officially left when I turned 30. So it's only been about 4 years. In college, I kind of stumbled into a house church. I'm not sure if y'all have discussed house churches before.
No.
It's exactly what it sounds
I
like.
don't think so.
Just the concept of like it's a smaller group of people and they do church in a living room or something like that.
Okay.
Oh,
That's really
okay.
funny because right down the street from me, there's a mega church called the House Church. So I was like, is it like a
A chain?
franchise? Yeah. That's funny. Okay. So an actual in the house church.
Actual house church. It was in
Got
my
it.
apartment in college, and then it kind of expanded into like 2 nearby apartments, and I was one of the leaders of it. And even still, I look back on that time and I think like it was one of the best times of my life, and it was a really special time that affirmed my faith. In retrospect, I think that what was actually being affirmed was community, because what kind of distinguishes house church from other churches is just it's about being together at all times and kind of prioritizing relationships and togetherness over, career or nuclear family and stuff like that.
Right. And we hear that a lot, that community is the thing that people miss the most. And so it's
Absolutely.
understandable that that would be, a happy memory.
It
Right.
is. And it's obviously not because it wasn't toxic. It was, and it had, a lot of problematic things, but it was still, I think that experience was so affirming that it took a much longer time to deconstruct. But right outside of graduating, I moved to China to be a teacher to teach ESL. And I think being a white man from the South, it was one of my first experiences like truly being a minority in certain spaces and just
Right.
like where my perspective and my temperament wasn't the default. So that was definitely a stretching time where I couldn't dismiss other people's worldviews just because I didn't have the purchase to like I might in Southern Florida. And then 1 year out of college, I actually got married. It was a heterosexual marriage. So my ex actually now identifies as non-binary. So I'll be using they, them pronouns. But at the time, it was a heterosexual marriage, and that was the experience of it. And the deconstruction really started to happen there. I was closeted throughout high school. I came out in college, not as gay, but as a Christian who struggles with same-sex attractions. Are you guys familiar with that turn of phrase?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was one of
Mhm.
those too.
Oh, nice.
As I said, are you me or am I you? Yeah.
And one of the things, their reasoning for why you shouldn't use gay is because gay is a way to infuse your own personal identity with your sin struggles. When you start to buy that as a queer person, you start to compartmentalize your sexuality in a way that's really unrealistic. I wasn't gay. That was just a random temptation I had. So why couldn't I marry a woman? Why couldn't God give prosperity to my marriage as long as I'm following him? But it was in the first year of marriage that like the disingenuousness of a lot of church culture and Christian doctrine really started to become really apparent as people were, telling me that my marriage was going to be okay because the secret sauce to a successful marriage is God. And the purpose of marriage is not your own personal fulfillment, but to model God's love. It became really strange because everything that I had to do in that marriage was this sort of like giving. But everyone around me, all the straight people in my life who were married, were clearly, pursuing romantic fulfillment or pursuing sexual fulfillment. And so I was like being told on a daily basis to negate myself in order to give of myself in a way that I was not seeing modeled by anyone around me. So I think it was there that I really started to deconstruct. And then I was in China when Trump was first elected.
I wish I was in a different country when that happened. Shit, I wish I was in a different country now because of him.
Yeah, it was nice to be away, but it was confusing. Like to have been gone from America for 3 years and be like, oh, this is what we're capable of.
Was your family Trump supporters because they were conservative Christians, or was he shitty enough to get their their non-stamp of approval?
They did tell me in this last election they did not vote for him. So I think they refrained from voting or voted third party. 2016, I spent a lot of time trying to convince them, but I think at that point they considered themselves two issue voters. The one issue being abortion,
Right.
and then even more kind of grim, Israel. Are you guys familiar with like Christian Zionism?
Can we please talk about it, Hugh?
I
Because I
am
don't
not.
think we've talked about it on the podcast.
Okay. So obviously there's a Zionism that is conflated from, Judaism, right? But Christians also have their own form of Zionism. Essentially, there's a biblical passage that says, whoever blesses Israel, God will bless, and whoever curses Israel, God will curse. And so a lot of people are like, in order to be aligned with God, I have to be aligned with Israel,
Interesting.
which is interesting because God was not always aligned with Israel in the Old Testament when they were sinning.
But that doesn't count.
Right. But regardless, there's a lot of people from my faith background who would not call themselves ardent Trump supporters, but would nevertheless feel compelled by their morals to vote for him.
Right. Which is just mind blowing to me because he's the furthest thing from anything that Jesus represents. He's the Antichrist. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That part I can't help you make sense of.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted the Christian Zionism conversation.
That was it. That's just like where my
Okay.
parents are at. For my own peace, it's not something I,
Right.
initiate tons of family conversations about politics these days.
Understandable.
But
Same here. All of us have those family members that were just like, nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it.
right. But then yeah, the pandemic happened, and I think for a lot of people that was just a pressure cooker. If there were doubts or struggles with faith that already existed during the pandemic, getting locked inside for months really kind of expedited
Yeah.
some deconstruction.
I think for a lot
Right.
of things too. Like I've heard so many people like finding their sexuality,
Mhm.
deconstructing from religion, like all of these things came to the forefront once you were just locked inside and had to sit with those thoughts.
Yeah. So I was in a niche group of openly gay Christians in hetero marriages. And so I was connected to a lot of people. 3 of my closest friends were queer people in straight marriages. And the 4 of us all divorced and left the faith in the same year
Oh,
of the
wow.
pandemic. So
That's awesome though that you were able to find such a niche little support group because I
yeah,
imagine that is hard to find.
it is hard to find. And in most conservative circles, the church strives to keep us apart. They don't want queer people, forming too many bonds. One of the first books
Right.
I was given in high school said, "Don't kid yourself. The only reason you'd be like friends with another gay person is to hook up." And so it's we were considered to be like a danger to each other in our quest for holiness. So,
They took your quest for holiness as a quest for holes.
but I was a pure kid. No gayness until literally I was not a Christian anymore.
Was there a final nail in the coffin when you began your deconstruction journey, or was it just kind of a cumulative, all of the things after a certain period of time kind of just coming to a head?
Yeah, so I think one thing I've talked about on TikTok before is that there's always like an emotional dimension and an intellectual dimension. So I've kind of already mentioned the emotional dimension, which is just being a queer person in a conservative Christian space. After a while, it just wears you down so terribly. And the only thing that keeps most queer Christians going is that platitude of like, the church is imperfect people, but that doesn't mean he's not a perfect God. So you're like, okay, all of humanity inside this church sucks, but God is still good. But I think after a while, the intellectual doubt started coming in. The more seriously you take the Bible and you're like, wait, what does this passage mean? And just a realization that the Bible can't be proven with evidence. But I was always so terrified of the hell fear that developed when I got OCD, like persisted all the way up till the age of 30. But I realized that fear could paralyze me in doubt for the rest of my life. So I guess the aha moment was kind of learning the difference between falsifiable claims and unfalsifiable claims. So it's like unfalsifiable claim. The world was created by a God named Yahweh who sent his son to earth. That's unfalsifiable. Who knows? But there are falsifiable claims in the Bible, like the Earth's age, the Israelite slavery in Egypt, all the historical claims of the Old Testament, and almost all the places where there were falsifiable claims, they were pretty clearly verified to be false. And so it's like,
Like rocks. Like rocks are fucking old.
Rocks are old. And if you're saying that the Bible and the world started 6,000 years ago, rocks are way older than 6,000 years. So if you believe in
Mhm.
rocks, you cannot believe in Bible, period.
But let me tell you, this was the last nail in the coffin that was kind of like expedited the beginning of the end. I was dog sitting for a friend here in Chicago. And, like for me, it's like they live in a nice apartment. The dog is so cute. I was like, I'm going to curl up. I'm going to pick out a cult mini series and just have a great night alone. I picked that documentary about the Nexium cult. Are y'all familiar with that?
Yes.
I haven't watched the documentary, but I do know of them.
So the first 2 episodes are about the people who ended up fleeing and what the process of like their doubts starting and how those doubts were treated, how they had intellectual doubts, but the leaders moralized the doubts into like a moral failing. I just realized that all the manipulative tactics they were using to quell doubts and dissent were ones that were being used in a subtler form in the culture I was immersed in. And once I recognized those patterns, I just couldn't unsee it, which kind of caused 4 months of spiraling. And then leaving the church, me and my partner kind of deconstructed and deconverted at the same time. So the divorce wasn't necessarily like my decision alone. But yeah, so that was 4 years ago.
Pretty recent in the grand
Congratulations.
scheme of things.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
congratulations.
Thanks.
Sorry about the trauma, but I'm so glad that you made it through to the other side.
Much
And
appreciated.
now you can write about it and sing about it. And I hope so many people come and see your musical. And also, it's probably cathartic for them too to
Yeah.
see those parallels between their life and your life.
That's what I hope. I've gotten to sit in the audience of the show during the workshop time. And yeah, I think it speaks to queer people a lot because I think that's just the perspective I bring. But I think a lot of people, can get something out of it. It was a really fun challenge because the conceit of the show is that like we're watching an episode of one of those old 90s shows being filmed. And so, I couldn't like write an openly gay character into that because that character would not survive in that world. So it's like, how do I write queerness into a show where queerness can't be named and stuff like that? And so we have such a talented cast, and the way that they've been able to really bring that out in those characters has been really beautiful. It is a comedy show. But definitely, especially in the rewrites, we were able to lean into some of the more nakedly somber and grim aspects of what it's like to grow up evangelical and lean into that.
I feel like looking at YouTube videos and stuff I've seen over the course of doing this podcast and looking up things Aaliyah has talked about, I feel like there's a lot of closeted characters in those types of shows anyway. So, they're probably in there. They're just trying to hold that back.
Well, if you ever have time, going back and watching those Bible Man episodes are nuts because so many of the villains are queer coded. And there's
Always, right?
right.
Yeah.
And there's a whole reason of that with like old Hollywood Hays codes, how they used to write homosexuality into villains and stuff. And Bible Man kind of just accidentally borrowing from that like catalog of references. But no, all the old Christian TV shows for kids are gay as fuck. Oh, can I cuss?
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
you could. Please cuss.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
cuss extra.
Yeah. That's all we do. Yeah.
Great.
Tons of cussing.
Well, it's like there's gay people everywhere. So even if they are in religion, if they're in Christianity and they're closeted, they're gonna be drawn to a theatrical community. Like that's kind of gonna be, where you find your people.
Absolutely. I think it's like it's like a homophobic talking point. Like when you start to hear how homophobes discuss gay people, you start to hear that they implicitly believe that us queers sprout out of urban environments as like fully grown adults. So that if you like create a godly suburb or something, we just don't get born there. I think about that a lot with the Palestinian genocide. Because Zionists have a tendency to criticize queer people for trying to support the Palestinians. And they'd be like, if you're in Palestine, they would kill you for being queer. And I'm like,
That's not the
there's queer
problem.
Palestinians there. Like us queer people don't consider like homophobic places to be just comprised fully of straight people. Not that I'd want anything like that to happen to a straight person, but regardless of what culture does or doesn't exist, or religion does or doesn't exist in a space, we're there.
And the thing that's crazy is everybody knows a queer person. I'm bisexual. My sister's bisexual. Like people are always saying, the whole love the sin or hate the sin thing. But they know people who have good hearts, who are great people, who do charitable work, and they're gay. They can't separate that and go, maybe it's not true that they're just these like horrible sinners who have all these, demonic things about them, because you see it with your own eyes that they're good people and they're just living their life like normal, and they can't separate that.
Yeah. I definitely come from a culture of Christians where they're like, yes, there's wonderful gay people, and I can see that they're loving, but that's not God's design for us as men and women, and that's not God's design for marriage. And so it would be unloving of me to support that, And that's kind of what the show seeks to address, is the fact that Christians, specifically American evangelicals, and maybe in the context of the show I'm writing, predominantly white American evangelicals, have created a private definition of love. And they bring that private definition into public discourse, which makes everything get so complicated because we can both say love, but we're referring to completely different things. And so with the conceit of the show being just like one episode of an ongoing Christian Kids series, the theme of this episode is God's love. how is God's love different from the world's love? And this is like a Sunday school talking point you hear all the time, right? So it's like loving a gay person and embracing their lifestyle is like giving heroin to an addict. To accept that is to enable, behavior that is an affront to God's design.
It's like I know that somebody has actually said that. Like I know that is a real talking point, and that is disgusting. That is just I hate them. I don't hate them. I just don't like them. I don't like that they have influence. I struggle with that.
It is a struggle.
Well, God's love comes with all kinds of conditions.
Right. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing with atheists or agnostic or anybody who's not Christian too. Like you can see that there are people who do charitable things who, feed the homeless and they're atheist or agnostic and like they're still saying you're not a good person or you're going to hell or whatever. And it's like I do more than a lot of Christians I know, but still because I have tattoos and I'm not Christian and, I'm queer that I'm not going to the same place that they're going, which is fine. If there is a heaven, I don't want to go there with those people anyway.
Fucking sucks. No edibles whatsoever.
Seriously.
I've actually never spoken about this before, but some of the lyrics I wrote for the show, I actually wrote long before the show as a Christian, trying to make sense of love as a husband to a wife. Because love just it started to make zero sense to me. Like when they kind of put that private definition of love on you that they themselves don't live out, it made the word love almost insanely meaningless to me. For example, you're an awful sinner, you deserve hell, and God loves you so much. And it starts to feel like God loves me, but does he love anything about me? And if God doesn't like anything about me, then what does love mean? It started to feel like love was just a light. And if you stand in its way, then you're getting loved, but there's nothing personal about it.
Right. And why would a loving God want you to be in a marriage and not be yourself and not have the feeling of, infatuation and romance and all of that? If he really loved you, he would want you to be happy and he would want you to be living your true, authentic self. And obviously that wasn't happening.
Right. Well, the whole point is we don't know our authentic selves. We get sanctified, right? Which is you get yourself reshaped until you look like Christ, which to me started to feel like disappearing. You're supposed to die to yourself, which I was always willing to do with the idea that I was going to land in like a soft pillow where God would bring joy and peace to my life.
Right.
But yeah, it was always very confusing. And even things like love as affection. Because I was gay, I didn't have those instincts to give affection to my wife, but I'd have to give when she needed. So like loving relationships were always to be about someone else needing and me about providing, which was an incredibly lonely existence. And so when God loves me, what does that mean? Is it just me needing to provide him? It was just like a very confusing time. I will say on the other side of this all, love makes so much more to me. And that's really what I think the musical is about. Just kind of like discovering love as a simple thing rather than as a convoluted doctrinal spiritual reality.
Definitely. And I love the little things that obviously I don't know what they're referring to. And you helped me with that with the Perry the Pew roach.
Oh,
I was like, that is so funny. And you're like, it was because of the church mouse, charity church mouse.
have you guys all
So I
seen Charity Church Mouse?
No.
Not. I think Christina sent I don't know, just like a picture or something in our group chat. And that was the first time I've seen Charity the Church Mouse. But that's a whole other level of lore that I'm going to have to get into.
It is like Lovecraftian horror. So I always wanted to have our own version. So we have Perry the Pew Roach, but we're going to keep that costume under wraps. You have to be in the theater to experience Perry for yourself.
Awesome.
Oh, that's so amazing.
But I will say we have committed to keeping her just as much of a Lovecraftian horror as Charity Church Mouse.
Love it.
Well, Psalty, the songbook, is creepy as fuck too. I like what?
Oh, but did you look up the Donut Man?
Yes.
Because he can get it. Psalty is creepy. Charity's creepy.
Yeah. Donut Man is, because he's just like a guy.
He's a guy, cute little pair of overalls, little mustache, a little talking donut. The central metaphor being that living life without God is like a donut because there's a hole in the middle of you.
Okay, but donuts are great.
God fills.
Like, get out.
But donuts are delicious.
And some of us like
Right.
holes. So
More like we actually prefer donuts with the hole.
With the whole,
Yeah.
right. Do you know about Buddy Barrel? Was that part of your church upbringing experience?
No. What's Buddy
Okay,
Barrel?
so you'll have to Google an image, but Buddy Barrel was this concept where the church would have this outside program come in, give these kids these little yellow barrels to fill up with all of their change for like the month or a couple of months. And then we would bring our barrels back, and then a man in a Buddy Barrel costume would come, and basically we're giving money to fund people's missions. And so
Is
there
he
would
just
be
a big barrel?
yeah, he's yellow barrel, big yellow barrel.
Okay.
They really know how to make their characters
I'll have to look that
interesting.
up.
I guess the evangelical characters are different from coast to coast.
Well, I mean, it's also denomination to denomination, I'm sure,
Okay.
because I was in the
Right.
Pentecostal Assemblies of God branch of things, and Hugh was in the Southern Baptist branch of things. And so we were rivals. There was a Baptist church across the street from us, and like,
Nope.
See,
we don't
I
mix over
I
there.
don't know this
We don't
lore
mix.
between different denominations because I'm like Christians, Mormons, like that's kind of all I know. I don't know all the different
Right.
flavors. So you guys are enemies. You were.
Yeah, not anymore. Now we're just the same person.
Right.
Right.
Southern Baptist, think of like the boring ones, no dancing. And if there's dancing, no hips, very drab. And we saw the Pentecostals as like the wild ones. I went to a Tammy Trent concert. She was a famous Christian singer who was from an Assembly of God, and her concert was at an Assembly of God. That was my only time going there. And I witnessed slaying in the spirit. And I was like, this is pagan. God protect me from this.
We just did an episode about how witchy Christianity is.
Yeah, it's so witchy.
You know, and we didn't have any of that.
I was going to say, was there any speaking of tongues?
The churches I grew up in, I think they were called, what was it, cessationalism, which is the idea that like certain spiritual gifts faded after the new church, which speed and tongues being one of them. I did go to some churches that believed in it, but it was very strict. Like they believed that it was rare, and if it were legitimate, someone near them would also be gifted with the ability to interpret or something. I don't know, but that always freaked me out.
Did you do comedy, like stand-up comedy, before you started writing your musical?
Not really. In Chicago,
Okay.
I did musical improv.
Oh, okay.
So Chicago has a very fun, bustling musical improv scene. The first show I actually directed was an improv show. It was Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, the improvised musical. So we would get like four characters to go on little summer vacations, but the audience would get to choose what vacations they went on. They got to pass around some enchanted pants and make up music on the spot. So that's kind of like the background it came from. Sometimes I play piano for it, and sometimes I'm on stage performing. And then, so this was kind of a transition back into a written musical form.
This is so random, but do you watch or listen to Trixie and Katya at all?
You know, I don't listen to their podcasts, but like
Okay.
I've taught the algorithm that I love them, so I do see them come across my TikTok and my Reels all the time.
This quote cracks me up because it's about musical theater and like how sometimes straight people can play gay okay, but gay people trying to play straight doesn't usually work. And they were talking about like how on Broadway the straight guys will be like, "You're my girlfriend and I want to eat your pussy," and it's like the gayest thing ever, and it's just one of my favorite
Well,
clips.
there is a very, very straight character in my show being played by a very, very gay man.
Okay.
He and I just did a completely different show 2 nights ago. It was like this insane take on the nativity story. He played
Ooh.
Elizabeth. I was the piano player, but he was in a bra during that show. And for my show, he is a jock in like a football uniform. So you'll have to decide for yourself if you buy his straightness. So we'll see.
Well, he's not getting pigeonholed into anything. He can play whatever.
Actually, like the self-insert character, the one that's like clearly gay in the show, is actually played by a non-binary lesbian. So we're getting some acting stretches here. They're all very capable of crossing over.
I believe it. I just love that quote.
Yeah.
"You're my girlfriend and I want to eat your pussy." I can't.
Are a lot of the people playing the characters, are they like from deconstruction?
I would say like a good 2/3 of them are. I met most of them through the audition process, so it wasn't necessarily like me scouting out people with fellow experiences. But I think obviously the audition notice attracted some of the right people. So there's a group of us who are all kind of like listening to line readings and being like, oh my God, this is bringing up trauma. And then there's people who are just like, I do not know the words I'm saying. And I'm like,
Interesting.
even better.
Right?
Our
Yeah.
first actor to play Benny Bingo, he's not returning for the second one, but he had so much dialogue to get through because he's the one that's teaching about Jesus. And I'd have to be like, it's R.C. Sproul, not R.C. Sprawl. And it's inerrancy, not inerrancy. Just like things that like Christians grow up hearing all the time that are like foreign language to people outside of the church. But no, I'd say
Right.
the vast majority of the cast and crew are definitely bringing their own experiences to the table in a way that's really fun.
So neat.
Yeah.
What is your favorite character? What's your favorite song? What's your favorite thing about the musical? If you had to pick something.
I'll give a shout out to my friend Megan Ramsey. She is a very funny and popular comedian here in Chicago. I did auditions for all the other characters, but there's this one character that I was like, I need Megan for this. So there's like the EvangeliKids, there's their group of 6 kids, and then there's Benny Bingo, who is their adult leader. And then I needed someone who could do all the miscellaneous. So Megan plays Perry the Pew Roach. She does all the puppets. We got to like create some of our own puppets for the show.
Puppets. I
How
forgot
fun.
about puppets.
Yeah. We have a puppet of Noah. One of my personal puppet I demanded to be created for the show, even though it has almost no relevance, was like a little cat with like a Pope hat named Magnificat. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Magnificat.
No, but I love it already.
There's just a passage in the New Testament where like Mary, the Mother Mary, sings this poetic song about the Lord, and they called it in Latin the Magnificat because it opens with "My soul magnifies the Lord." And so as a kid, I was always like, Magnificat? What cat is this? So I brought that cat to life.
Right. Interesting. I just saw a meme yesterday talking about how often they reference unicorns in the Bible, but cats are never mentioned. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, it sounds true. I cannot recall the mention of any cats, but like lions, yes, because like there's Daniel in the lion's den, and
Right. Something about Samson and
Yeah.
a lion, like honeycomb out of a rib cage. I don't know.
something.
There's a
But,
lot of weird
something.
shit in there.
It's all
there's also
silly.
a segment of the show where the kids are being trained to evangelize. That's another big aspect of evangelicalism, of course, is converting people. And so Megan has to play all the different unsaved, lost people to be converted. And she does such a good job playing all those different characters. One thing that I wanted to be different about this show from maybe some other satires is I wanted it to be kind of fundamentally kind-hearted. And that led to a creative decision to not necessarily use too much of the kids themselves as the vessel for satire. Like, meaning like there's bigotry in evangelicalism. I wasn't going to put that into the kid characters because I really wanted like the audience to sympathize with what the kids are going through, regardless of how devout they are. Some of them are very devout Christians, but I wanted a character that would kind of represent what authority does and how authority does the indoctrinating. And so that was kind of good, all funneled into the host of the show. I don't want to give away too much about him. I'm kind of putting a lot of the more jokey stuff into the TikTok clips that I'm putting out there. But there is like some exploration of who he might be. And yeah, I think that I'm really excited for people to kind of see that in the flesh. As far as songs, there is kind of a self-insert character, a sad little OCD-ridden gay boy who did not get a song in the first workshop portion of the show, but in this new revival does get a song played by John O'Mamel, another brilliant comedian I've performed with a lot before. And just watching them put together this song makes me cry. So really looking forward to getting that one on stage for the first time.
I appreciate that you're here because I'm sure that you're extremely busy. Is it just a lot of rehearsals, a lot like what's your life looking like between now and when the show opens?
Well, thankfully, I'm not the head director. I knew I was going to be really busy. So the very talented Barb Jackson, also a pastor's kid, also queer, is the head director. So I can kind of zip around. I'm more of like the music director, choreographer, and then I'm doing a lot of marketing and promoting for the show because the show opens in a month right now. Just a lot of marketing. As you guys saw, I was a TikTok influencer once upon a time. It was actually in most of the TikToks that I've made were actually in the year after my divorce and deconversion. So it was very raw, and I was very grateful to get the modest following I got in that time. But then I was like, I need to be off social media and like rebuilding a life in the real world.
Right. Understandable.
So I'm back on TikTok. not my favorite thing. TikTok can like drive you nuts if you try to be a content creator on there. But what that, that year of doing TikTok after the divorce really taught me is that like there is a really cool community building of people deconstructing on TikTok. So I was like, this show is very niche, although, people who don't have that background have seen it and they've loved it. It's just that there's a bunch of little Easter eggs that fly by most people's head, but if you grew up in it. So we just really wanted to find that niche audience. So TikTok's the way to go for now.
Yeah.
And it seems from comments that there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I wish I could come. I wish I was,
Right.
Are you doing any live stream?
That's the plan. Everybody is demanding a live stream now, but all the footage that we've released on TikTok is of the older version. So if we do live stream, I want it to be the kind of new complete version, which means that we probably won't have that for a couple of months. I would love to take this around.
But I was just going to ask, like, take it on the road.
I mean,
Right.
I am not a rich man, so I'll have to find someone who wants to bankroll that. But I would love
Not
to.
yet.
I'm gonna
Not
be
a rich man yet.
No, but my dream is like put this show up in Texas, or like I want to bring this around the Bible Belt.
I was going to say, just take a tour through the Bible Belt with this show.
Yeah. Selfishly, I was going to say California, but no, that Bible Belt is a great
I would
idea.
love. I would go anywhere that will take me, but yeah, we're gonna see how this run goes and see what the future for the show is.
I was going to say, there's a lot of like niche references in the Book of Mormon, and there's so few. Were you going to say that, Noe?
I was just going to say that, like, with the Book of Mormon, majority of the fan base for it, they don't even get all of the things, and it's still hilarious. But then it's even better when you come from that background. So I could see it being super popular even beyond that niche community.
The response I got from the first run was a lot of like couples, for instance, would go where one couple had an evangelical background and one didn't, and there would always be like a chat session after the show where they'd be like, no, that wasn't even exaggeration. That's just quotes from my childhood. Like a lot of people who don't have our background are like, is this a little bit of a caricature? And like, girl, no.
Yeah. It was so funny. My mom and I went to see the Book of Mormon, and all of the people sitting all around us, they were like, no, that can't be real. And my mom was just like whipping her head around. She's like, it is. It is. Like, it was so great to be able to be like, no, this is real. People don't believe it.
Yeah.
So I think it's great for all audiences.
Yeah, because the clips that I've seen so far, I was cracking up, and I'm like, this is probably way more funny to people who have the background. But I love musicals in general, and I love satire about religion. So it's like, sign me up. If I could come to Chicago,
I was about to say, if you guys find yourself in Chicago, it's the worst time of year to visit.
I'm like, I cannot. My California bones can't do it.
Yeah, it's not great in the Chicago winter, but yeah, I'm sure we'll be going on a little bit longer. Hopefully we'll have a live stream up, so hopefully people who can't make it to Chicago will be able to see it.
And you said it runs through February, or was it through April?
So it's January and February. It's going to be every Friday except for MLK weekend, which is January 16th. So there's going to be 8 shows total. Our January 2nd is kind of operating like a preview, and then full force, Fridays at 7:30.
And that's in Chicago on Chicago time.
In Chicago, Central
Chicago time. Central.
Who knows what that means?
Time. It's all. I mean, is time even real?
Right.
Time is. It's just
according to physicists.
No, it's social construct.
We deal with space time. We're not citizens of this earth. We're citizens of the good Lord in heaven.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen and amen. What has your life been like since leaving the church with spirituality or religion? Do you have any spiritual practices that have remained, or are you like, it's all a scam, it's all fake, I'm out all the way out?
So I steer away from identifying as like anti-theist or anti-religion, mostly because sometimes that's been a really harmful weapon in the hands of a white guy. Sometimes white anti-theists and white atheists can really use their conviction to kind of mow over other cultures that they don't quite understand. So I steer away from that, but I do kind of isolate it down to this idea that like treating unfalsifiable claims with certainty inevitably causes harm. And it can be small harm. Like people who treat the Enneagram, for example, as scientific fact are going to necessarily misunderstand and reduce people, which is a really small form of harm compared to queer kids getting rejected from their families. So as far as spirituality, I guess I've replaced my certainty with wonder. Like, I don't know what happens when we die, but it's like really beautiful to wonder and to not know. And
Right.
it's so freeing to not have to be certain about anything anymore.
Right. And not fear
Yeah.
going to some made up fiery place for just existing as you were born.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes Southern Baptist is oftentimes connected to Reformed theology, which can kind of create really intense ideas of what heaven is like. Like heaven is just like one long, intense worship service.
Ugh,
I'm
Oh,
like, I just want to like
sounds like
lie
torture.
in a hammock.
Right?
right.
I don't want to do work. There's some part of Mormonism where you're like in a waiting room
Mm.
and somebody described it as like school. And I'm like, that doesn't sound fun
Yeah.
at all.
So before you get assigned to the level of heaven, you're in this waiting period where you can be learning.
You don't get assigned to your level of heaven until Jesus comes back.
Right,
Mm.
right, right. So you're just in the waiting room and you can either be worshiping God or learning about him, correct?
Ugh.
Or if you're a bad person, then you're in spirit prison.
Uh,
There's spirit
Am I
yeah.
prison
right?
and spirit paradise. So
Right.
depending
Okay.
on where you're waiting, depending on how much you tithed and how much you contributed to the church's investment fund. There's too many levels to it, honestly. There's the outer darkness, which is the worst of the worsts go there. And then there's like the three-tiered cake of Mormon heaven, where if you're top tier, it's the celestial kingdom. If you're
Okay.
mid-tier, it's telestial. And then if you're bottom tier, it's terrestrial. So
Is terrestrial heaven still good?
Yeah.
it's better than
I
the
just
outer darkness.
Okay.
It's like the free version.
it's
Ooh.
still more beautiful than Earth. So I'm like, what's the deal? I get to
Right.
go to this place that's still slightly better than Earth, and I don't have to be with my crazy ass family. It's
Right.
like
But you just like have to
Sign me
watch
up.
an ad every 7 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
probably something like that.
It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, Hulu. That's so funny. I'm going to assume that you lost people along the way that are no longer in your life or no longer supportive of, of you. Is there somebody in particular that like you wish would come to their senses?
I mean, absolutely. I would say that I'm lucky enough that like no one outright cut me off. No one was like,
Oh,
I
that's
cannot
good.
associate with you anymore because you're not a Christian. Everything was a lot more subtle, pretty heartbreaking. You know, when
Right.
you're suddenly on the outside, um, and there's definitely been communication breakdowns so severe that, like, what do you say? You know, like
Right.
for Southern Baptists, or at least this is Reformed theology, once you're a Christian, you can never be unchristian because, like, the Holy Spirit transforms you so completely and seals you that you're
Oh,
saved forever. Which oftentimes mean that, like, for someone like me who no longer identifies as Christian, they'll say something like, I was never truly a Christian,
I hate that.
Interesting.
which
Yeah.
for me, especially when everything was first happening, was so heartbreaking because not only was the process of leaving my faith so painful and requiring of so much intellectual inventory, but now everybody is thinking I was faking the whole time, or on some level, my faith wasn't legitimate, which kind of just taught me, like, oh, I can't even tell my own story anymore because in order to maintain their faith, they have to refract it through these different projections onto me. So I can describe why I left the faith, but for some people, it's just gonna be like, oh, he wanted to have sex with men. Like the temptation was
Right.
too strong, or, you know,
Right.
stuff
They
like that.
boil it down to some stupid, like the smallest part of the whole and just pick something and go, that's what it was.
Right. So there definitely are a few people that like I just, you know, that were so dear to me. And in our time together as Christians, there was a level of authenticity between each other. And I feel like this is a fantasy a lot of ex-Christians have. It's like if I could just isolate them in a room and just show them the YouTube videos I saw and make them read through these
Right.
passages on Israelite archaeology that I read, and I just, you know, look at them like this and say, be real. That they'll stop,
Right.
you know.
They'll get it.
Every person's mind is so much more complex than that, but I definitely think of a friend in particular who was part of the last church that I was involved in, where in the last few years we were both helping each other through some pretty significant doubting seasons, whereas I ended up where I'm at and he ended up, you know, still devout, and there was no big falling out, but we stopped talking. And I think about him from time to time and just wish, like, once you take a look at it without fear, feels so clear.
Right. Well, you
Mhm.
got to kind of hope maybe he's lurking
Mm.
and watching your stuff and maybe something will will crack
Maybe.
that shelf a little bit.
And Aaliyah, I'm sure you experienced this where you're like, that person is gay. That person is fully gay. They've never said a word to me, but that person could be so much happier over here.
Yes, yes, yes. So when I was in college in Texas, there were several people in my mind. I was like, you're probably gay. You're probably gay. You're probably gay. And since I've left that college, there have been people who I am either friends with on Facebook and like they're out. They are
Uh-huh.
out and trans. They are out and trans have
Yeah.
had top surgery. And this was like the thing that blew my mind was just yesterday, I was in a TikTok live and there was somebody that I went to college with like 15 years ago in the TikTok live saying that she had
What?
just started deconstructing over the last month, over the
Aw.
last 1 month. And because she is gay. And she was one of those people in my mind when I was in college of like, girl, you're gay. You gay. You just give
Real,
gay.
real
Like,
recognizes real.
real
Mhm.
recognize real. Yeah. Like, so
For
no,
sure.
like it's definitely true. Like if they say that 10% of the population is gay, that's 1 in 10 people on the campus. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
see you, you see
Yeah. And
me.
eventually you get to a place where you're like, 1 in 2 people are gay. That's all.
Right. Yes.
Right.
4 and 4 people here are
Are on,
queer. So it's
on the
like
alphabet bomb.
yeah.
The thing
Right.
is that once you get into an environment, and it usually has to be a small one, where there's no fear and total acceptance, there's a lot of queer people in those spaces at all times. And you'd think that Christians would agree, right? That like, even if they're against Christianity, do they really want to use fear and control to urge people to live Christ-like lives? And I think that most Christians would say that, yes, they agree that like they don't want to just use shame. They want to truly convince people to follow Christ. But like, I want, those people that I perceive as queer from my past life, I would just want to see what happens if they were to get into a safe space
Right.
where, because even like beginning to wonder those things is a threat to your whole life. Because you're like, you
Mhm.
can't just think, am I gay? You think like, am I gay? And oh my God, if I am, I'll probably lose my whole community, my whole purpose. So like,
Yeah.
in environments where those huge stakes are not attached to questions of sexuality, it's like 98% queer.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just losing your whole community. Like, at least my experience when I was deconstructing and when I left church, like, I felt like I lost a big piece of myself because my whole
Mhm.
identity was as this Christian person or as this Mormon person. And I had no sense of self outside of that because church takes up so much of your time and so much of your
Mhm.
brain space that like there's no room left for you as a person.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's
And they
also
want it that way.
they want it that way. That's intentional. That's by design. But for somebody to come to terms with, oh wow, like if I choose to figure out living my life as my authentic self, that means losing my community, but also trying to figure out who I am at 30 in your case, or at 25 in
Yeah.
my case, or later in life, even for other people. And I think that's a big,
Mhm.
big task. And I think for some people, it's easier to just stay in the system that they're in than to figure out who
Yeah.
they really are outside of church, outside of religion, outside of Christianity, outside of whatever that structure is for them.
Yeah. It's an
Right.
easier pain to deal with to stay. And I think, yeah, talking about losing yourself for me, it was like as fundamental as like, what is it like to be alone in my own head? Like,
Mhm.
as a
Mhm.
religious person, I felt like my stream of consciousness was always operating as a prayer as well, you know?
Mm,
And so just leaving the faith in me like, "Oh, my thoughts are completely my own. I'm the
Mhm.
only witness to them, and there's no judgment on them whatsoever," was like a
right.
completely freaky rewiring of my brain. And it's still not fully rewired, right? Like, sometimes I'll just start praying randomly.
Really?
Mhm.
I had not thought about that until literally right now.
You're helping Aaliyah deconstruct even more.
That like, yeah, I'm alone in my head. Like God's not listening.
I think, like, for me, whenever I felt out of control of a situation, I was oftentimes praying for God to um, help deliver that situation in the way I needed. So for me, like if I'm out of control, sometimes my brain will just start being like, "Dear God, please help with this." Or if I feel intense guilt, I'll start confessing to God, and it's like second nature. I'm like, "Oh wait, God's not real.
Right.
I don't owe
Right.
that to anybody." But
And I'm sure being raised with all of that fear and guilt, I mean, who's to say, what caused your OCD if you would have always had it? But I'm sure that that definitely fed into that a lot.
Mhm.
These paranoias that you have, feeling like you always need to be perfect and someone's always listening to you. Like, how has it been since deconstructing? Has it gotten easier at all for you, feeling like someone isn't listening to your thoughts all the time? Or is it still a struggle?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a passage in scripture that's like, we all know that murdering is wrong, but to have hate in your heart for another person is also like murder. And like you can commit adultery in your heart. So a lot of the sins that I committed as a kid were just thoughts, and you're supposed to take your thoughts captive. And so I was always, so the obsession was like, I'm not supposed to think about that. Oh, I thought about it. I need to take that. The compulsion is take that thought captive.
Mhm.
So I'd be in these endless cycles. And so now when I can feel myself getting into those cycles, I'm like, let's save this for therapy. We
Right.
can break the cycle if I just let this thought go for now. Hell is not going to be the result of me putting this off. So
Mm-mm.
yeah, I think, and to my parents' credit, they did look into mental health resources when I was a kid. They brought me to the pastor first, and the pastor had nothing constructive for me. But once they realized that this was something diagnosable, I got some tools. So yeah, definitely mental health being spiritualized is a pretty detrimental thing, and being free from that is a huge blessing.
Right. Well, that's good that they recognize that, because when people are like, "Oh yeah, go to therapy at the church or go see a priest instead of a counselor." And it's like they have no background, they have no credentials, and you're going to them for mental health services. They're going to try to exercise you or
Are
something.
you aware of biblical counseling? Oftentimes, churches will have biblical counselors, which they encourage people to go to instead of therapy, but they're not mental health professionals. They are just people who are trained to use the Bible to help people solve problems. And if you want to watch the most depressing video that might exist on YouTube, there is one biblical counseling session that was filmed of a married couple. And it's just incredibly clear that the woman has intense clinical depression, but her husband and the biblical counselor are just laying into it as a spiritual failing.
My God.
And so it's the most heartbreaking thing to just see like a broken woman be guilted for not following God enough while she's just like waylaid with depression.
Right.
Right.
And it's mental health and all of these struggles, OCD, depression, anxiety, not only is the system set up to make you feel that way as it is, like
Mhm.
paranoid and scared, but also that it's your fault. Like
Right.
you're not doing enough. And it makes me so sad that
Yeah.
kids are growing up this way. And it's like all of this stuff wouldn't even have to be a worry in your head. I just feel so bad.
For my first year of experiencing OCD symptoms, the response was the commands of scripture, which are do not be anxious. But an obsessive thought is by definition a thought you cannot control from coming into your head.
Hmm.
So I was just helplessly, constantly sinning, which meant I had to constantly be confessing, which is just torture as a kid.
Oh, I just want to hug you.
Yeah. I hate
I just want to
that.
hug
I
you. I
appreciate
want to
that.
go back and hug little Hugh.
Little baby
Actually,
Hugh.
one little detail is my middle name is Hugh. 4 years ago, when I left the faith, I kind of abandoned my first name, which is Christian.
Yeah, get that out of here.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I was like
Girl, bye.
I was about to like join a choir or something. And I was like, I'm about to introduce myself to a bunch of people. And I was like, oh God, I do not want to like go about having to carry this name around for the rest of my life. So Hugh, by definition, means like the mind or the soul. One thing a TikTok commenter once said to me, I had made a video about how my relationship with God used to soothe me because he was the one person who could love me fully and accept me. And a TikToker was like, that was actually you the whole time. Like
Mhm.
that gentleness and tenderness was always you giving it to yourself. And it's like, that's really
Aw.
beautiful. So yeah, I'm Hugh now, but it was little Christian who was struggling with all that OCD. The weirdest thing about me, this is going to make me sound like so woo woo, is I have a secret name for myself. I don't tell anybody.
You're like a Mormon.
Is that a Mormon
Yeah.
thing?
Uh-huh.
Yes, when you go through the temple, you get assigned a secret name. I've never had the pleasure. Aaliyah knows more about it.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can just call me Phoebe.
Are you Phoebe? Mormonly Phoebe?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's her get into heaven name that only her ex-husband's supposed to know.
The interesting part is that they make you feel like you're getting a special name, like it's directly from God, but actually everybody that goes to the temple that day, they all get the same name. The men
Oh.
get one name, the women get one name, and it isn't just a month, like where it resets. And so there's only
Yeah.
like what, 30
30 names,
something.
31
Yeah.
names. So like if you go, so I think I went through the temple on like the 28th day of the month. So everyone that has ever gone through the temple as their first time on the 28th day of the month, every woman is named Phoebe. And I looked it up. I think every man is named Barnabas for that day.
It's like a fast-paced astrology, right? You're a
Yeah, but they
Phoebe.
make you feel like it's special. And we interviewed someone a while back, and their husband's special name, they looked it up. What was it? It was Nimrod.
It was Nimrod. Yeah.
Nimrod. I was like, "Oh my."
Mormon God didn't know what was going to happen to that name.
No.
No, and you also get to learn the secret handshake to get into heaven
I
because
did hear about
obviously
that.
that's how that works. Yeah. Yeah.
I think my uncle was taught the secret handshake. Obviously, he didn't teach it to me.
A finger in the hand and one in the wrist or something. I don't know.
No.
It's not the shocker? Oh, okay. Sorry, a different handshake.
Shocking.
When you live a more sex positive lifestyle, you don't have to like resort to like kinky hand stuff.
Right.
And that's like
Just,
that's
yeah,
what that
kinky body stuff.
liberation is.
Yeah.
I watched a couple of your videos where you talked about your marriage, and I never thought about like loveless marriages or, those kind of marriages in religion.
Mhm.
I always think about it from the female's point of view. Like she had to get married because they want to have sex, and that's what the church says. And they get married and have to pop out these babies so young because that's why you get married and that's
Mhm.
why you have sex is to, procreate. I've never thought about it from the viewpoint of a man or a gay man.
Mhm.
And that was really eye-opening to think about that because you're always thinking like, oh, these poor women who are stuck in these marriages where they're, they have to sleep with somebody that they're not in love with or they're not attracted to.
Mhm.
And I've never thought about it from the male point of view.
Yeah, they're incredibly damaging. I wish I could like
Yeah.
run into every chapel and be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Don't do it, right?
Because like,
The patriarchy hurts men and women just the
Mhm.
same.
And I don't want to negate what my ex went through, of course. Like being trapped in a marriage where someone, doesn't want to be married to you is like, that's going to scar them for life. But yeah, there are a lot of straight women who naively, and not their fault, but get into marriages with gay men and just experience a lot of confusion. And have zero support, right? Because no one knows how to help you because it's just like no one's talked about it openly before.
There's no roadmap for that.
There's not. I always felt like, and this might be more specific to me as someone who likes video games, but there's old video games where there's a glitch, and so you accidentally end up outside the map and you're just kind of like stuck in the darkness. I'm like, that's me. There's like
Right.
there's no path forward for me. There's no one coming to get me. I just have to have a level of faith that no other straight person has, that God is somehow going to deliver this in some nebulous way. But no, it's abusive. I think this is a problem in a lot of religions, but like Christianity and consent do not really match up.
Mm-mm.
Because in 1 Corinthians, it says your body doesn't belong to you. So to hold it back is to sin, which effectively removes consent. So a lot of people like me struggle with like PTSD that's pretty similar to people who have gone through assault and stuff like that.
Right.
Just because marital duty is like incredibly all consuming and requires something of you that you might not be ready for. And to what you're saying, something that like is so much more often the experience of women in Christianity, but especially in what are called mixed orientation marriages. It can definitely happen to men too.
Yeah. And I hope people who follow you and start following you now because of your amazing musical are going to look back on some of your videos and hopefully that helps them, even if it helps just one person realize that they're in a religion or a marriage that they don't need to be in. They don't need to put themselves through that trauma. So your past videos can still definitely bring help to people who are in the same situation.
I hope so. And I, with the theme of the show being kind of reclaiming love for yourself, I really do hope that more so than me being some sort of like intellectually persuasive person, that people can be encouraged by my material to just be kinder and gentler to themselves in a way that is demonized in the faith tradition I grew up in.
I have one last question. Hugh, do you think Bob the tomato and Larry the cucumber are gay together?
That is an amazing question, and I want to treat it with reverence. I think that it is an unrequited love. I think Bob will never come to terms with his sexuality.
Yeah.
It requires like a certain level of vulnerability and self-examination that I think we can all agree Bob is like way too high strung to slow down and process.
Yeah.
Larry,
So in this scenario, Bob is the one with the feelings.
I think
For
Larry is one with the open feelings because Larry is, of course,
Okay,
pansexual.
obviously, yeah.
Bob, he's never going to know. He's going to marry a female tomato and live his sad little straight life. And I think on his dying bed, he's going to be like, I could have put it in Larry.
They could have been a Greek salad together.
Oh my God. Yeah. They could have gotten Italian dressing every
Yeah.
damn where, you know?
Yeah. Everywhere.
What about Larry's the cucumber, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Larry the cucumber and the donut man's donut.
I am very repulsed by that image because the donut puppet, the hole is like his mouth. So it's like he talks out of it. And if I just think like Larry plunging right in and choking him, I mean, that's literally shoving it down his throat.
I mean, like religion.
Yeah.
Some people
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't kink shame.
I just kink ask why
Yes.
sometimes.
I provoke kink reflection, you know?
Right. And so, Hugh, your socials, before we do 7 Minutes in Heaven, because we always seem to forget to ask people, where can people find all of your amazingness?
Where can we buy tickets?
So on TikTok, both my personal content and the content for the show are on the same page. That's Maybe Hughes. My middle name is technically Hughes, Hughes. But when I looked that up, the definition was just like many of Hugh. So I just Hugh.
You're just a single Hugh.
Yeah.
And we'll post all this in the show notes.
Great.
Also.
Yeah, so TikTok at Maybe Hughes, and then we have a specific Instagram account for the musical. It's just EvangeliKids Musical. I'm going to just let them look in the show notes to the spelling of EvangeliKids. That's the worst marketing decision I made, was to create a name that no one can spell or pronounce, but I'm sticking with it.
Well, it sounds good.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah.
It rolls off the tongue.
One of our first songs is them singing that over and over. So we drilled the pronunciation into their heads at the very beginning of the show. So it's just like a one
Love
little
that.
hump they have to get over.
All right. So 7 Minutes in Heaven is our fun game that we played. And the first one is Fuck, Marry, Kill, Lindsey Graham, Psalty the Singing Songbook, and Absalom, who for the non-Christian people is David's hot rebellious son.
Oh, I thought that was the lion from the wardrobe series.
Right.
That's why I had to clarify.
Absalom went to war with David, right? He tried to usurp David.
And then Absalom also, I think David told Absalom he had to go fuck his stepmom or something like that.
Dear.
I don't remember that part of the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't get that far in the thing. I was just looking for hottest random Bible people.
I'm sure Lindsey Graham is excited to meet the Lord, so I'm going to go send him to heaven.
Okay.
I don't wish violence on anybody. But I
do.
think Lindsey Graham wants to see God. And we'll find someone to replace him politically. We can handle that part. He doesn't have to worry about that part. He just needs to worry about giving God a big old hug up in the clouds.
I thought you were going to say a big old blowjob, but yeah, that's good too.
However he wants to express his love for God. I mean, God wrote the Song of Solomon, and that's some kinky shit.
So
I know that Absalom loses the war, so I feel like I'll be a casualty if I marry him. So we're going to get a quick fuck out of Absalom.
All right.
I'm sure it'll be hot.
The human, not the lion.
I want to clarify, I'm only sexually interested in humans.
Yes.
No, the main takeaway, if people can, from my time here on the podcast is that I am not into animals.
Okay, good to know.
So I'll get a quick fuck in with Absalom before he loses the war and probably dies violently. So I guess that means I'm left to marry Psalty. I don't know how that's going to work physically, like where the holes are.
Remind me what Psalty is.
He is a giant anthropomorphic psalm book.
Okay.
He's got a pretty cute face. And you know what? I really like kissing more than anything. So if I can kiss a head, that's fine.
Look at you finding the silver lining. Number 2, what is the most ridiculous thing you believed in terms of scripture or doctrine in your past religious life?
I don't want to go with one of the cliched ones and be like how young I thought the earth was. But I was such a young earth creationist that when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said explorer, because I was convinced I couldn't find the last remnant of dinosaurs on the earth.
That is adorable.
My parents had given me a book as a kid that suggested that dinosaurs were still around. So,
living
gosh.
dinosaurs.
oh yeah, not
living
fossils.
dinosaurs, yeah.
Oh, no.
Like Jurassic Park.
Oh my gosh. That's so cute. Okay. And who do you think is the hottest deity? And that could be any character, mythological figure from any religion or culture.
I know that I just spent a lot of time saying that I'm only interested in humans. That being
But
said, and that
There's a big
holds
but coming.
true. Um, but in a theoretical world where the god Pan was alive, are we all familiar with Pan?
I am.
I am
I am
not.
not.
He's a faun.
Okay.
So like it's a
Have you
Greek
guys
god.
seen Pan's Labyrinth?
So they made him
No.
freaky. Pan's Labyrinth, Pan is freaky. From what I understand about Pan, he's just like a very horny guy who plays the flute and has a lot of sex. And
Okay.
I could make a life with him, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's like the top half of him is human-esque, so
Yeah.
I think we're still in acceptable territory.
Okay, yeah, good. Thank God.
Right. And what is your Jello salad? And for non-Mormons, this means, is there any dish from church or religious family gatherings that you still make or enjoy?
I just gotta say, I never ate good food at church.
A lot of Christians tell us the same thing.
It was the Bible Belt, and we would do potlucks. But when
Mhm.
you go to a Southern potluck, like obviously I love Southern barbecue, but that's not what potlucks were. Potlucks were just endless casseroles and endless things that were called salad but weren't. Potatoes or chicken drowning in mayonnaise or something. So if I had to choose something I miss, it'd just be like the communion, like the Lord's Supper. You got the tiny little cardboard squares that were our bread, and then some Welch's grape juice. And that was always like such an amuse bouche before lunch on Sunday mornings. So I really,
A little charcuterie.
yeah. So just a little shot of grape juice and a tiny little dry wafer would be what I miss most.
So then,
All
I
right.
guess in the same vein, like, what was the worst thing then? If the food wasn't good, then what was the worst thing at these potlucks?
I would say probably the potato salad. I like mayonnaise as like a condiment on a dry food, but when it becomes like the main consistency of just like wet, and this is going to sound super elitist, but like so much Southern food, especially for white people, is just like mush. That's what casseroles are.
Right.
It's like
Right.
mush
Mhm.
after mush after mush.
Okay, so the coasts are similar with that. Our culture is just bad food
Yeah.
in mush form.
Your
Yeah.
culture, not mine.
I said ours, to be clear, for the listeners. Our culture, white
Once,
people.
while I was still a Christian living in China, I hosted a Thanksgiving dinner for my church. So I had like Chinese people, French people, Singaporean people all coming and bringing their own dishes. So it wasn't a traditional
Mhm.
Thanksgiving dinner, but as far as church dinners go, primo.
Maybe that's where the deconstruction started. You were like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, I'm like,
other cultures have seasoning.
this is a really amazing homemade crepe, and maybe God's not real.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe I can have sex with men.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If God was real, he would have revealed these crepes to me sooner in life, right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, spicy hand pulled noodles. I think I can be gay.
right.
Hey.
Yes. So if you were to start a cult today, what would the uniform be?
I would say just one good quality cloth, and it's up to you on how to use it. You can turn it into a toga if you want to like show off some clavicle. You can just like
Right.
wrap it around you if you don't want to be perceived that day. You can do like a slutty tankini if you want to like show off the goods. But I think that like, getting everybody to kind of just make it their own with the one cloth,
Right.
that's how I would do it.
But it's still cohesive.
Yeah. Everybody's telling a story with their cloth.
And what's your favorite curse word?
The boring answer would just be fuck, because that's probably what I say the most often. I will say, I was once reading a blog post while I was living in China, and I didn't understand one word because it was in Chinese. And I put it through the translator, and the translator said, this word means idiot. I was like, great. Now I know the Chinese word for idiot. So after that, I go back to my kindergarten, and I'm in my office with all my coworkers, but there were kids around, and I made a little clerical error. And in Chinese, I go, I'm such an idiot. And the whole room goes immediately silent, and everybody looks up at me. And that's when I learned that the translator just didn't feel like it could be completely honest. It had to mitigate the severity. And so I was in my kindergarten, and I made a mistake, and I went, I'm such a stupid cunt.
Oh, I love that. I'm sorry that happened to you, but that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
So that's
Cunt is my favorite word.
That's shabby. Shabby. Other than that, my favorite English curse word is, I think it was just an episode of Parks and Recreation where Amy Poehler's character got stressed out and she went crap on a spatula. And that's something I say from time to time.
I love that
That's
show.
fun.
Yeah, me too.
And number 7, what is your guilty pleasure?
At this current moment, my guilty pleasure is Cat's Eye, the international K-pop band.
Mhm.
I
love
cannot
that.
stop watching their music videos because the dancing is so good and the songs are so catchy. The guilty part is I think they're probably introducing a whole new generation of women to eating disorders, and it's not unique to them. It's like K-pop as a genre. The beauty conventions are so stringent. They can't even be
Right.
different heights. They're all so incredibly thin and all their outfits are about accentuating thinness, which is a pet peeve of mine. But I just can't stop watching. So
I think I watched the Gap commercial a million times.
so great, right? One incredibly creepy thing about that is I'm all for sex positivity. One of those girls is 17.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Gap commercial was kind of a response to Sydney Sweeney's weird racial dog whistling jeans commercial. And so Gap was like, what if we get a really cool, diverse group of women? Because Cat's Eye members, they're East Asian, Indian, Cuban. So very much not a single blonde girl. And just a really cool dance in Gap clothes. But it was pretty sexual, which is fine with me, except for that one of them is doing all the sexual dances as a child. And that's the guilty part of the guilty pleasure is that I still watch their dances.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Fuck Sydney Sweeney.
Fuck Sydney Sweeney. And fuck creepy studio execs who turn underage girls into sex objects.
Yeah. Did you guys see that video of Sydney Sweeney in the interview where she's like, did you want to explain or clarify that's not what you meant? And she's like, I know a lot more than people think I do, and I don't have anything to say. It's like, okay.
Yeah, she
All
doubled
right.
down on it.
So you knew and you agree. All right.
What was that stupid cunt word again?
So Chinese is tonal. So it's sha, bi, sha, bi.
Yes.
But I do not recommend using that in mixed company like I did.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you, and we will do whatever we can to promote your show.
Awesome.
And yeah, if you'd ever want to come back and talk a little bit more, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Well, thanks so much, guys.